Hey, what's going on, everybody? Live Sober Channel is back here again. It's Wednesday, and up here, a little secret spot, waiting on the sunrise here. Got the moon up above. Let's see if we can zoom in. I don't think I can, but it's about a half moon now. So it's directly overhead. If you watched the videos last week, which I don't think anybody did, but that's okay. It was a full moon, so the full moon was back behind me, and eventually it's above me, and then pretty soon, about another 6 or 7 days or so, it will be all the way with the sun and then behind the sun. So it's kind of cool to kind of be in tune with nature that way. Do you know if it's a half moon or a full moon, or when the sun rises and sets and stuff like that, where the stars are in the sky at the time of the year and things like that. Those are things that as humans we used to kind of all know, but now we're indoors and we know what time other things are, things that are more important to us now than we have calendars and watches and things like that to tell us what time it is, instead of looking up in the sky and kind of using those as clues and things like that. So anywho, I don't know why I didn't really have a topic or anything specific to talk about. I guess one thing I'll talk about is just kind of on a good health kick going right now. Like most people, I kind of go up and down and things like that. So let's just share a little bit about that, I guess, and see if it's helpful for anybody. It's kind of helpful for me to just share, because teaching you get better. But I've been reading this book called Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, and it's I say reading because I've read it. I read the physical copy. I listened to it as well, or physical copy. I mean, on the phone. And then he's got videos online, and then he's also been on a bunch of podcasts. So he's been on Sam Harris, and he has his own podcast. He's been on Huberman. He's been on a bunch of different places talking about this book. So there's lots of ways to kind of get this information if you're interested. You don't need to read the book. The book is 380 pages, and I almost hope that at some point he makes an 80-page version of that book that's just do this, because he says a lot of really good things to do, but it's kind of he explains all the science behind everything, because he's a doctor, which is great. I like to know the reason behind things, but then sometimes it gets a little bit dense, and there's a lot of letters and weird names of stuff, and at the end of it, sometimes you're kind of well, what do you want me to do? And what should I be doing? But so I think there's an 80-page book in there. But that's where maybe listening to a podcast kind of gives you some sense of it, or you can listen to me right now and I'll kind of explain it the best way I can and see if it helps you out. But he's kind of talks about a few things that were really interesting to me. One is, he runs a longevity clinic. So people come into his clinic and they're looking about how to live a long life. And it's not people, it might be people in their 60s and 70s, but it's people, younger, in 30s, 40s, 50s. And the idea is what he calls, here comes the sun. I don't know if you can see that or not, but he calls it healthcare 3.0. So basically healthcare 1.0 was leeches and stuff that didn't work. Healthcare 2.0 is kind of what we have now, and it's basically they kind of wait until it's broken to fix it. So if you have a broken arm, they'll fix it, and that's kind of the way they treat almost everything. So and it makes sense. It's a profit motive system. So if you don't have diabetes, they're not going to treat you because you don't have diabetes. And when you get diabetes, then they can give you medicine that you have to be on for the rest of your life. Here, I'm going to show you this while I'm talking, but so there's a profit motive. There's no profit motive for a doctor to have you not get diabetes, or they haven't quite figured that out yet, right? So or whatever else it is. I'm not saying that they're bad or anything. I'm just saying it's just the way the system is set up. So In other words, let's say you're, there's a medication that helps with your keep your lipid numbers low. Like the American diet, pretty much everyone over 30 or 40 should be on lipids, but you don't get prescribed to that until you're like in the danger zone, right? So even though somebody like me could probably benefit from being on lipids to help me from ever getting to that zone, and keeping my body healthier, I can't get a prescription for that because it's not in the danger zone yet, right? So it's things like that. It's also things like, they say screen for this cancer every 5 years. That's great for on the macro level, but on the micro level, if you don't get screened for cancer, let's say you get screened for a cancer and then the next year it starts developing, and you wait 4 more years until you get screened, that's not a good outcome for the individual, right? So look at that. So on the individual level, it makes a lot more sense to do more testing, to be more aggressive, the average American might be at this level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should wait to that level until you do an intervention, right? So that's kind of one part of it. The other part of it is thinking about not just how long you live, but like how well that is. And he calls that not just lifespan, but health span. So in other words, if you great, you made it to 90, but if the last 15 years you were stuck in a chair, couldn't do the things that you wanted to do, then you want to try to avoid that, right? So talks a lot about that. He talks about the 4 horsemen, of the big killers. So heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and then diabetes. And he talks about, different ways to prevent those, to things to test for and things like that. So highly recommend you get the book and take a look at everything. But a few highlights for me is, one is how important of how much he stresses that exercise is the number one thing that you can do for every area. And I thought he was going to say diet. He's kind of well known for being a big diet freak. He's done keto, he's done fasting, he's done all these different things. And basically, when it comes down to it, he summarizes diet as like, don't eat too much and eat nutrient dense food. And it's like, okay, that's, he's not like, you have to do this specific diet. You don't have to be vegetarian, you don't have to be keto, you don't have to be paleo or whatever. Just don't overeat, and make sure that you're eating, nutrient dense foods, you're getting your nutrients. Because, for him, there's just way too many variables in nutrition. Obviously, avoid things like poison, drinking gasoline, or variations of it. No, but, I'm kind of joking. But, things, like obviously alcohol, something that I've abstained from. And, he does bring that up in the book, about how if you drink, especially if you drink after, 5 or 6 o'clock, how bad it is for your sleep. And that's one of the big things he talks about is so he talks about working out, and I really want to get into that probably last, but he said that's the number one thing. So food, nutrient-dense food, don't eat too much, don't overeat. So easy to do, especially if you're drinking, then you make a bad food choice too, right? Or at least I would. So, or smoking pot or whatever, like you do that and then you get the munchies, right? And then you overeat and things like that. So, having that sober lifestyle allows you to kind of keep that under control a lot more, I think. Since we are talking about living sober, and living sober also could be, living sober from, being addicted to unhealthy food choices. So, eating foods that are going to be nutrient dense, eating foods that are healthy for you, that are going to satiate you. So, 100 calories is 100 calories. 100 calories of broccoli is going to make you feel a lot more full than 100 calories of cookies or chips, right? You eat 100 calories of chips and you just want to eat more chips. You eat 100 calories of broccoli, you don't want to eat for an hour. So, or longer. So things like that. So then he talks about big into sleep. So anything you can do. I mean, he's kind of like a sleep, I don't want to use, he's just big on sleep, really trying to get that 8 hours, putting up blinds that completely block out all the light, putting your phone away, don't have your phone in your room, all those things that we've heard. I'm not super good about that. I do better on sleep than I used to, that's for sure, but I still don't get nearly as much as I probably need. Or should try to get in bed about 9:30 is my goal. And then fall asleep pretty soon after that, hopefully by 10:30, and then I'm up at 4:58. So that's not that'd be 5-7 hours if I actually slept the whole night, which I don't, because I always have to get up and go to the bathroom, and then I wake up, and then I could be up like today. I was basically up since I woke up around 3:30 and didn't really go back to sleep. So, I was in bed kind of laying around, did a little kind of like sleeping meditation thing or laying meditation thing. But anyway, so sleep is huge. So make sure you're getting that. I use an eye mask, and maybe I'll talk about that another time, that has earbuds in it. I'll talk about that another time. Something that I find helpful. So sleep, eating, there's definitely some medicines and stuff that he recommends. But the big thing is working out. And he says that's the number one thing that you can do. And he's really specific though about what are the type of exercises. And it's really changed up pretty much my whole routine in a lot of ways. I've been I've been into fitness, basically since I was a high school wrestler, and I go in and out in waves and things like that. But for the most part, normally have, I'd say 3/4 of each year, I've got a pretty solid routine going, and then I'll fall off or whatever. And then for the last few years, I've been a group exercise instructor, so that's kind of been a way to help me stay consistent. Teaching those classes has been a way. So I teach a Wednesday morning 6 a.m. class, which is like a HIIT style class, a Friday morning kind of yoga style stretch class. So that's been a way that I've been really, it's kind of been consistent. So even on my worst week, I'm still working out twice. And I like to play pickleball and do other things. And I have a standing desk. I tend to be just kind of an active person in general. Like if I go to the playground with the kids, I'm normally not sitting there. I'm normally, out with the kids, playing with them, chasing them, doing pull-ups on the bar or whatever, freaking out all the other parents. So I tend to be pretty active just in general, but, especially over the last little while, I've kind of gotten away from like strength training, and I've been doing the HIIT training, the cardio, the pickleball, and been actually kind of staying pretty lean. And in the book, it kind of made me really kind of rethink my things. So one of the neat things he does when you come into his longevity clinic, this Dr. Peter Attia from the book Outlive, he said he has this checklist that he calls the Centurion Decathlon or something like that. And it has all these different activities on it, and they're just daily activities. And he says, all right, what activities do you want to be able to do when you're 100 or you're 85, right? So there's things on there like, pick up your grandkid, or be able to go to the second story of my house and down to do laundry or whatever, just daily things like that, right? And then, so let's say you choose a few things. So let's say we chose those two things. All right, so picking up your grandchild, okay? So functionally, what does that look like in a gym? Well, that's like a 30-pound goblet squat, right? So you squat down with 30 pounds and come back up again, holding that 30 pounds. That's what you would need to be able to do to be able to pick up your grandchild, right? So I'm 44. So let's say right now, not only can I do a 30-pound goblet squat, I can do a 50-pound goblet squat. So the question is, when will I not be able to do that goblet squat anymore? Because if I keep training the way that I'm training, no matter what, I'm going to lose in my 40s about 1 to 2% strength per year. Okay. In my 50s, that might go up to 2% to 3%. And then in my 60s, that might go from 3 to 4%. You get the idea. So there's kind of like a graph, right? So if I'm plot 50 pounds right here, and we know just statistically that I'm going to lose a percent of that each year, it's going to go down, 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 down. And eventually it's going to get to a point where it's going to hit 30 pounds. So let's say it hits 30 pounds when I'm 70. Okay, great. I'm going to be able to pick up my kid when I'm 70. But if it gets after 70, and it goes into 29, 28, I'm going to really be struggling to pick up my grandkid when I'm 72. And by the time I'm 85, there's no chance. So what does that mean? Well, that means I need to get my strength up now, because if I can get my strength up now when it's a little bit easier to do that, then when that's going to push out how long I'm going to be able to do that activity. So that is one of the big things that's really changed in my workout routine, is I'm working a lot more on strength now. And I'm doing a whole routine, and I'll probably talk about another one called Shortcut to Size. You can just Google it. You can download it by Dr. Jim Stepani, who's an awesome, highly recommend his workout programs. I've done a few of them. Shortcut to Shred is a great one. Shortcut to Size. I like the shortcuts. But it's a 12-week program. I'm 5 weeks in, and I put on 15 pounds of mass. And my BMI, or my body fat has actually gone down percentage-wise, and I've gained 15 pounds, which means that I've put on a ton of muscle. And the gains that I've seen in the gym as far as strength are just off the chart. And we can get into that a little bit deeper as to how that program works and how to add muscle and things like that. But there's a few things about lifting things that I didn't really think about, heavy things, because as I was getting older, I'm like, well, I'm going to kind of do lightweight, high rep, take it easy on my body, which makes sense, right? Like, sometimes you lift heavy and you're like, oh, my shoulder, that hurts my shoulder, something like that. The point isn't to lift heavy all the time, but at least, once a month, we should be lifting heavy. Why? Because one, it's good for our strength, overall strength, but two, it also strengthens our joints and our bones, right? So our bones react to the stresses that we put on them. So if we put heavy stress, like a heavy squat, a heavy bench press, a heavy deadlift, those your bones will actually get stronger, right? And we want strong bones, as we know, as we get older. So lifting heavy is something that has really changed, and we're already coming up on 20 minutes, so I'm not going to get into the whole routine on that right now, but that's been one big change. So think about adding that into your routine if you're not doing that already. I'm not saying lift heavy all the time. I'm doing it once a month, and again, I'll talk about that a little bit more, how I get into it. But if you just want to get the whole plan, it's not something I invented. I'm trying to use people who are a lot smarter than me, and it's the gains have just been incredible. At 44, to go from 135 to 150 pounds, and to have less fat than when you started, it is pretty awesome. Part of it is that I've done it before, so it's there, and that it makes it a lot easier. But it's not going to be easier next year. It's only going to be harder. So if I can get that strength up now, let's say I started at 50 pounds. Well, what if I can get up to 70 pounds, 90 pounds? How far out am I going to push out that ability to pick up my grandchild, right? All right, so there's one. Two, the second thing, what do we talk about? I want to be able to go, all right, so I live in a place, and my laundry is downstairs in the basement, right? So I want to be able to go upstairs, get the laundry, carry the laundry downstairs, put it in, and then walk back upstairs without at the end of it being like, right? Okay. Now, functionally, what does that look like? Well, that's a VO2 max, okay, of 24, according to him on the book, okay, or pretty close to it. Don't quote me, but pretty close to that. What is VO2 max? VO2 max is how efficiently we use oxygen. And you've probably seen, on a Gatorade commercial, or maybe you've had one where they hook you up to the machine, they put you on the treadmill, they put that mask on you, and they take you, it's a horrible test, they take you to the very end of your ability to exercise, right? I mean, they just take you to full out level 11 on the chart, right? And what they can do then is they can measure, that helps them measure how efficiently you're using oxygen. How, when you breathe in, how much of that oxygen is actually getting out into the body, right? So when we're young, all your capillaries in your lungs or whatever, I don't know the technical language, but your lungs work great. All your blood vessels are working great. Everything's smooth. And as we get older, what happens? You have some degradation of the lung tissue. You have some, maybe from pollution, maybe some unhealthy habits. As we get older, you just have different, we just kind of, things just start to not work as well. Same thing in our blood vessels, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just like strength, that it goes down just a little bit each year. So let's say my VO2 max right now is a 35. Okay. Now we can put that on the chart and say 44. Okay. At age 74, if you keep doing what you're doing right now, you're not going to be able to go up and down the stairs without having to, take a big major pause. And by the time, you're 80 or whatever it is, you're not going to be able to do it at all. Right. So that's kind of eye-opening. And so then it's like, well, how do you get your VO2 max up? So his prescription for that is doing a high intensity workout, or a high intensity interval. And so an interval is when you're working and then you take a break. And I've been into this type of training for a long time. I've seen super amazing results from it. I think, I'd much rather go and do, 1 minute on, 1 minute off, or 1 minute on, 30 seconds off, things like that. I've ran a HIIT class for years now. And because what do we know? We know that the best sign of health isn't just how hard you can work your heart, but how quickly it recovers. Okay. So, and it makes a lot of sense. So let's say you were chased by a tiger, right? If you're chased by a tiger, you want to be able to have this big adrenaline rush. You're going to sprint out maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes max. And then boom, you need to, at the end of that, you might be completely gassed. You want to be able to go all out for that time so you can get away. But then you want to be able to recover super quickly so that you can potentially do it again, right? If it catches up, or whatever, or just get back to normal as quick as possible. So we can see that, how quickly does our heart rate go back to our resting heart rate after a workout and things like that. So if we get on the treadmill or go for a run for 60 minutes, you only get one you're pounding that heart for 60 minutes, really grinding it into the ground, which isn't bad for it. I mean, it's good to exercise it, no doubt about it. But you're not getting practice of that recovery, right? And if you're going for 60 minutes, you can't go for 10 on level 10 for 60 minutes. Level 10 you can only do for a very short period of time. And so you're going to be if you're going for an hour run, max, you're going to be at maybe a 7 or 8. If you go up to 9, even you're not going to be able to sustain your level 9 for that long. So to be able to sustain for a long period of time, you're really not pushing your heart to the absolute limit, right? So if you can do a shorter burst and keep it, and then go take it up to a higher limit, right? So instead of an hour at level 7, you do 4 minutes at a level 9, 10, where the whole time you feel like you need to stop. You're actually taxing the heart a lot more, which means that you can get a lot more workout in a lot shorter time on the heart. You're actually taking it to a limit that you'll need it to go to in case of emergency or something like that. If you need to sprint to catch the plane, right? A marathon running isn't going to help you that much, right? I mean, it helps you if it's the long run, but it's not going to help you in that quick burst energy that is a good sign of health. And then it's that recovery. So his prescription is that you do ideally a 4-minute set, 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off. Okay, 4 minutes on, and we're talking like all out. So get your heart rate up as quickly as possible and keep it up. Push it. Not you're level 8, you're level 9, you're level 10, where you feel like you need to stop almost the whole time. How high can you keep it up? And that's going to look different for everybody. I mean, I teach a group exercise class that has, everybody from, people in their 30s up to their 70s, people are doing run in place and going crazy, and some people are just marching, and they're both hitting their version of level 8, 9, 10. So you do that for 10 minutes or 4 minutes. And this is what was so counterintuitive to me, and I'm still having a hard time with it. But because I'm starting to see these results, I'm totally bought in, is that we take a 4-minute break. Now, I say we work hard, we rest hard, so we take that time right now, and we're using it for some stability work, some balance work, things like that. There's the sun, it's fully up, it's just beautiful out here this morning. We use that for that recovery work, and what we're trying to do is get our heart rate back down. We do some nice breathing, in through our nose, out through our nose, breathing out longer than we breathe in. That activates our vagus nerve system, which helps your body like calm down. They always say take a breath. Well, it actually works, right? So what you're doing is you're practicing. You're giving your heart practice in that recovery. And so what does the body do? It responds. It's like, oh wow, holy crap! What's he doing to me? What's she doing to me? He's gonna work 4 minutes like this. Okay, I better respond. I'm gonna get better at doing that, and I'm gonna get better at the recovery because I get the practice at recovery. And so with that, we can increase our VO2 max. So let's say I'm at a 35, but now I start working on it. I get that up to 40, get it up to 45. Well, I'm extending how long I'm gonna be able to do those type of activities when I'm older. And to me, thinking about training that way, especially as I'm, in my 40s, I used to do the Tough Mudders, used to have events and things like that, really tax the body hard. And, it's kind of like you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm kind of done with some of that, maybe, proving myself type stuff. Now what am I doing? And now I'm really training for, the second half of my life, and how long can, you start to see what happens. And, there's no doubt about it. I took a big toll on my body with, how much I was drinking and not sleeping and not eating like crap for a lot of my 20s and early 30s, I feel like I've made, like, a lot of that has been recovered, and doing now, it's like using these tools, I can prepare for the next, 40 years, hopefully. And, when I am in my 70s or 80s, like, hopefully I can do those things that I want to do because I'm training for it now. And when it's easier, it's so much easier in your 40s than in your 50s. And if you're in your 30s, it's always easier yesterday, And so, they say the best day to plant a tree is today, or 20 years ago or today, right? So, do it today. So, we can't go back 20 years, but we've got today. So, highly recommend you pick up the book. I think those are, so the other thing he talks about is zone 2 cardio, something that I need to kind of figure out how to incorporate. Zone 2 is like, it's going to be a lawn sustained. It's not really like a run. It's more of like a brisk walk, maybe a hike. Maybe he likes to ruck, so he throws on a heavy backpack. He likes to kind of pound his joints, and that he says that's really good for you. It seems counterintuitive to me, but, he's the doctor, so I need to figure it out. But, throw on a heavy backpack, maybe go play some Pokemon Go, walk the dog. But it's supposed to be a little bit longer, 60 minutes a few times a week, where you're getting to a point where you can talk, but it's a little hard to talk, right? So in the high interval training, you can't talk. You're you're gassed. And this one, you should be able to have a conversation, but it's not very comfortable, right? So it's a brisk walk. It's not just, leisurely walk. Maybe like carrying something heavy, pushing a stroller or something like that, where you can get into it a little bit. You're not just kind of walking around the mall. So, those to me were some of the big takeaways. And then, the other thing he talks about is the stability training. And that's, whether you want to do yoga or stretching or something like that. But there's no doubt about it. Yoga is one of those things that, I think there's a lot of, I think there's a lot, to me personally, there's a lot of things around yoga that are almost like to give it too much credit. Like, I almost want to call it something different, stretching or something like that. I call it Y stretch here. And it's just, it doesn't need to be, namaste and this and that and the other thing. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but the movements are natural movements that are good for you. And, we should all be working on our coordination. We should all be working on our flexibility. We should all be working on, being able to stay in a pose for, a while. Those are real life things that we need to be practicing for. So whether it's holding a plank, getting our head below our heart, like in a, quote unquote downward dog, going through a sun salutation, those type of movements, I call them yoga burpees. I mean, those movements are just foundational movements that are human movements. Like, we need to move like humans. And we don't do it in our natural day. We don't need to climb trees anymore. We don't need to do weird stuff anymore. You don't even have to bend over anymore. I saw a thing where, it puts your socks on for you, so, I want to be able to put on my socks for as long as possible. So people always tell me, hey, I don't do yoga because I'm not flexible. I'm like, that's like saying I don't eat because I'm hungry. It's like, you got to do it. And I'm not saying I'm super flexible. I can't touch my toes. That's not the point. The point is you get in and you practice, and each day maybe you get a little bit better, or just don't get worse. Like, don't get, that's kind of what this whole thing is about. Like, you're getting worse every day, even if you're doing exactly what you're doing right now. So you have to be doing more right now. Otherwise, we're going downhill. Once you get past 35 or whatever it is, things are going to start falling apart. And they haven't been able to fix everything yet. Maybe in our lifetime, maybe my kids, they'll have it figured out. Maybe they'll just upload us to the internet, or maybe we already are. Who knows? But as of right now, you only got one body, and I think that Outlive book is a really great place to start. Highly recommend the book. In the comments, leave me a comment if you want to talk about it. Would love to chat individually with you if you want to, if you're around and want to come work out with me. I teach free, it's free classes with your membership, or you get you a scholarship, whatever. But, it's having a big impact in my life. Not just the physical side of it, but the mental side of it too. And that's the other thing he talks about in the book. And I guess I'll wrap up with that is, what's the point of living a long life if you're miserable? Oh, man, right? I mean, it's true, though. It's like, what are we doing? Like, I'm living this life and I'm miserable. I hate everything, and, or I'm mad about everything, or I'm depressed, or whatever. And I'm not saying it's your fault or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, there are things that we can do to help one another. And, I think this is part of it, and, the author, Peter Attia, he goes into it. You can read the story, but, he's, he on the outside, he's got everything. He's got the kids, he's a doctor, he's got this, the house, the car, and like in the inside, he's, he's just miserable. He's fighting with everybody. He's, he can't find happiness at the end of, he buys this car, he's not happy. He buys that, it's like he gets the, this accolade, it's just never enough, And so, there's no happiness at the end of any of that stuff. And, Jim Carrey said it best, and we got to talk about him at some point, but, it's like, he said, I wish everybody could be rich and famous so that they can realize that it's not what you think it is. It's like, it doesn't give you what you want. There's never enough. There's never enough money. There's never enough fame. There's never enough crap. There's never enough. And so, it's somehow trying to find a way to be happy with the things that we have, enjoying the moments that we do have, embracing the suck when it comes and saying, yeah, this sucks, and this too will pass, this happy moment will go away and this sad moment will go away. And, being sad is part of life, and being happy is part of life. And you can appreciate both, and without both, neither makes sense. What are you gonna be happy? Oh, this is great. Oh, great. Oh, I'm so happy all the time. I mean, God. That's why heaven doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, isn't this great? Yeah, this is great. A Bill Burr bit. It's like, yeah, it's still great. Oh, it's still great. Yep, still great. Everything's perfect. Still perfect. Yeah, it's still perfect. Yep. It doesn't make. The Buddha said they're suffering. And I think everybody agrees with that. And if we realize, he also said if we can embrace that suffering, then we can essentially get rid of it, because we realize that the suffering is the complaining about the suffering, not the suffering itself. Because the suffering is, the pain's going to happen. Somebody you love is going to die. You're going to lose your job. You're going to, your leg is going to get broken. You're also going to win the lottery. And they're all the same in a way. They're not, none of them are going to last forever. And none of them are going to bring you everlasting happiness or everlasting despair. It's one of the great mysteries and things to think about, and something that I've been trying to talk about and think about a lot. But, I think that's kind of the place where we're ended is, if you want to live a long life, why? What are you going to do with that time? It drives me crazy how many people retire and then do nothing to help. What people need help, especially people growing up now, go out, go read a book at a school, come, go volunteer at your local Y and teach a basketball league class or knitting class or, whatever. What are you into? Netflix? Fine. Teach a Netflix class, do something. You're going to just hoard all this money and then hoard all this time and then just, go live somewhere. I don't know. So, and maybe I can't say anything because maybe that's what I do, and that's probably what I'll do. But it just seems like, it's not enough, just to be living. There should be a purpose behind that here on earth. And, if we have time and we have ability to help others, that seems like what we should be doing, and, you can't do that if you're not healthy yourself. And I get that. But if you have that ability to, then, I think it's an obligation to, pass that on. And, so that's something we should talk about too. We'll talk about volunteering and what you do with your time, especially with that sober life. I mean, think about how much more time you get when you're not drinking every night. That's hours and hours every single day. That was one of the biggest things. What do I do with all this time? Go help somebody. That's how I get all this stuff done. I don't watch sports anymore. I don't watch people play a sport. I play the sport. Things like that. So, anyways, now I'm getting on a soapbox. But the book's called Outlive. It's really helped me out. Hope you guys enjoy it. It's been helpful for me to kind of talk it out, and again, kind of just doing this for myself. But if there's anyone out there listening, wishing you all the best. If this is relatable at all, great. If it's not, then that's fine too. It's just some thoughts in my head. It's not supposed to be the end all be all on anything, but coming up on 10 years sober from alcohol, as I define it. And, there's been some lessons learned that, I kind of want to talk. And I like to bring other people on here. So if you want to come, if you're listening and want to come and chat on this, I've done some interviews before. Those are really amazing. So check those out in the earlier feed. Anywho, gonna go get showered up here for work, and have a great day. All right, guys. Bye.